My name is Philippe Langlois. I'm going to speak about something that is kind of obscure. Telecom security is a side where not only a few people know about what they are talking, but a lot of people want that it stays that way. That basically people don't know so much about what's really security. So it's not about open standard, because standards for telecom are quite open, and you can read a lot of things about the security. The problem is the real life. The reality check is lacking. And today what we are going to see is one reality check on the level of what we call core network. So core network are what you use daily just to make a call, to access some data through your mobile phone. Any kind of thing that you do with your mobile phone is going to trigger some operation on the core network. And I'm going to introduce technologies, the attacks, and then how we can hack from two perspectives, the attacker perspective, but also the verification or scanning perspective, which is very important to know the reality. We can't base our knowledge on what is said or what is said to exist. So what is the SS7 network? First, it's not a network where people care so much about intrusion. In our day-to-day life, usually we care about where the intrusion is going to happen. There, it's very marginal. To their eyes, it's very much of the importance is the reliability. Because 1 minute of downtime for a telecom network means millions of minutes of consumed operation not being generated. And that means for the operator direct loss that can easily amount in millions of dollars. So it's a highly redundant network, but compared to the internet, they really specified a lot of things, whereas what should go on which link, and where you're connected to a cell station, where basically you're going to have your signal go through. And this is very much specified. So it's not like you're going to inject something from the radio side and it's going to be able to reach any part of the network depending on the address. And that's something which is a bit unsettling in the beginning. So why do we have these signaling networks? Signaling networks are actually here thanks to hackers and freakers. Because what happened is that in the 70s, you maybe know these two guys, some people were manufacturing and using SS7 called blue boxes. So how many here have heard about blue boxes? One person? No, okay. Wait. How many have used blue boxes? Well, very important is to see that SS7 took a clear step in separating the two networks, the network with voice and the network with signaling. So what happened is that they took the approach of saying, okay, since we were hacked by hackers who understood how to produce within the phone network some tones that could control the central office, well, we are going to use one network to carry voice, and that's the links. And another network to carry orders such as this person on this circuit want to call that person on that circuit at the other end of the country. Well, that leads to a very interesting network. This network here is definitely not where the voice is going through. It is a network where a few components will just send signals. The main component here, or the main ones, are going to be the mobile switching center. So that's where you're really connected when you have your mobile phone on. The radio infrastructure around you is just a way to get there. What you are talking with is this MSC that is routing your calls to your correspondent. And the database of subscriber, which is the HLR. And here they are going to use this SS7 network dialect, which is completely different than IP. So that's why very few people actually care about this and actually know about this, is that basically few people know about SS7. And these people are called telecom engineers, and telecom engineers have a very precise mindset. They will spend a lot of time setting up systems, such as the DSCs, the radio, BTS, the HLR, and they are going to spend a lot of time certifying that it works in any kind of regular setup. Once it works, it's delivered to the customer, or considered as delivered, and we call that in France tomber en marche, which means that they made so many tweaks so that it works and it works. Don't touch it. And from that perspective, the hardening part of testing it is only from reliability. Most of the time, there's not even a question of how can people improve through these systems. So, in order not to hack every day, the approach that they got is to put all this within some kind of wall that protects the whole infrastructure, like a lot of firewalls, really serious network segmentation. Once you're in there, then most of the time you can easily pass from one machine to another machine. It's not infrequent to see login, root, password, root on this kind of systems. We're in 2010, and this still exists quite frequently. Another problem is that this is one generation. Let's say that it was for GSM. And after GSM came GPRS. And after GPRS came 3G. So for each of these generations of network, they are interconnected, of course, all together, work together. But most of the time, there's a huge bid that some contractor will get. So what happens is that it's not the same, and very often it's not the same people who deploy the first network, then the second, then the third. And it's very often a contractor from the equipment manufacturers, such as Ericsson, Nokia, these people, send consultants in there, say, deploy the network for blah country. And then they finish their work, they sign the papers, the network is working, they go away. So there's not a real tradition of centralized knowledge about what is all over the SS7 network. Contrary to IP, for us IP, if it's really a mess, we launch scan, we start to look at routers. In SS7, you can't really do that. You have to go one machine per machine and do an audit of its configuration and see which one is linked with which one. Upon very interesting penetration test I did, I was like, oh yeah, I found something during a progress meeting. I found something in your network through the X25 network that you use. And I'm like, oh, okay. You must have skipped somewhere. You must have hacked something else. Because we don't have X25 network. Oops. So I logged in the system, which was in their address range, and it's X25 over TCP. It's not very well known. And I arrived to some login page and I went to the Telecom engineers and say, oh, is this familiar to you? Okay. They didn't even know they had X25 over IP network because it was deployed by some people that there. So now what's happening is that a lot of these are being hacked because the walled garden is crumbling. And there's regulation push, there's technology push, lots of people are reverse engineering the protocols, and lots of people are using new entry points that are just rolled out for new business. We can speak about femtocell, we can speak about value-added services. Please dial this number to know if you're in love with this person. You know this kind of thing. So, how to hack in all these networks? Well, one big part here is a lot of research is being done on the mobile equipment. So, when you talk about Android systems or iPhone or SIGTRAN or any kind of telecom, there's the operating part, and there's the web part that talks with the network, which is called broadband. And there's lots of people who are doing, for example, it says Osmocom VB. Are you familiar with this? So it's the first open source release of a complete broadband mobile phone. So a mobile phone that you can use on the network, that you can make calls with, that is completely open source. So heavy source for fuzzing. You can now fuzz network, which are worth hundreds of millions of equipment, with simple equipment, which is even way less expensive like this, because it's older kind of I think Motorola phone that you can reflash. As you put, for example, OpenWRT on the new Link 6 router, well, you do exactly the same with your mobile, and you can start hacking with this. Then there's people like Harald Welte and the people with OpenBTS and OpenBSC. They are doing some heavy work which is linked to how the crypto stands. So you can have some people, for example, such as Carsten Noll, who are building rainbow tables on how to attack these networks. And also, how to control the whole network as if you were part of the network. So here, OpenBSC is a complete implementation of the controller of all the radio base stations. And from there, what you can do, for example, if you imagine that you have some base station at your home, which is basically something that costs now $100 or $300 on eBay, is you can perfectly replicate the network like of Vodafone or whoever, or Orange. What happens is that there's no authentication on GSM from the handset to the network. So if you pretend to be the network, and if you jam the other network frequency, and accept any kind of subscriber to connect to your network, then you can from there disable crypto, forward all the calls to SIP account so that the person is actually calling. You won't be generating costs for the person, but the person won't notice, and the call going clear. You can do direct eavesdropping. So this is the kind of thing that now, in the days, it was only accessible to law enforcement equipment. Now it's something that you can do with open source and let's say for less than $500. Then some people are actually abusing femtocell. Are you familiar with femtocell? Heard about it? Femtocell is basically like a wireless router you put in your home, but there what you do is it's connected through the ADSL to the telecom operator and provides 3G coverage in your home. So if you're in a remote area or have bad coverage from the cell phone, you get the femtocell very for cheap or free and install it at your home. And this has been reverse engineered and provides direct access to what we call ABIS and for the equivalent connection for the 3G network, which directly transfers signaling. So here we are talking about some equipment that is basically a Linux, which is, of course, unpatched with some firmware that was shipped maybe 1 year ago. So you can hack into it, take control of that, and start injecting message. There has been some reported hacks of people getting into the 10.x network of telecom operator through the femtocell. So what they did is have a certificate on the femtocell to connect to the IPsec tunnel. Well, in the worst case, the certificate is the same for all femtocell. In the best case, it's called a SIM with EAP, a SIM authentication that you can pretty much use as you want because you have the SIM. Okay, this is great. Then you have also call to external APIs. Have you heard about HLR Lookups? So basically it's lookups that enable spammers to know if one phone number is active before sending a spam to it. And the cost is so low that you can access it for very cheap on the internet directly to know to which HLR, which MSC, and sometimes even the IMSI, so the secret or some secret private information of your phone, from any part of the world. That means that you can target one phone number, maybe one in my pocket, and know which country I'm visiting from anywhere, as soon as you have SSN access, or you could do that massively. As soon as you have internet access, that means anyone, it's something like €100 or 10,000 requests. So you can do 10,000 location tracking on someone and know roughly up to the city where the person is. There is only one country that obfuscates that, and I don't know why, but it's France. And of course, another part is SMS injection. Well, here, just you've seen these kind of attacks that make some iPhone crash, of course. But sometimes you could inject some things that have weird impact on the infrastructure itself. So there has been things that can reprogram your thing with new code that's called SDK. Well, there's also control messages that are being sent through the SMS. Here today we are going to see how we are, this is a specific part, how we are going to target the overall infrastructure of the SS7 network. Okay, very often, one thing, people tell me, how do I get access to this core network? Well, you'd be surprised with the number of vulnerable value-added services, gateways, web apps that the telecom operator rolls out and say, okay, this is running, you have the key, for this it's running, good, so now don't touch it, don't do anything, don't touch it, because otherwise we can't guarantee that you will be able to use it for your network. So in this consultant approach, you have very much a situation like hospital system or SCADA system, which are unpatched because people don't want to touch it. It might break the operational system, and since everyone cares about reliability, you have very few patches there. So a lot of things are unpatched. Then you can also do consulting in order to know more about SSN, but the problem is that very few organizations give you access to these. It's very hard. But one interesting thing is that if you have a product, they will be really happy to see if it works on their network. But if you come as a person, they're like, oh, maybe we need to do some checks. Especially with the kind of hacker attitude, you can't go in a telecom operator and wear jeans and be like in a hacker conference, very open to everyone. It's very much an environment governed by security system. This is changing. One little story before I start that is that there very often was a war between IT people and telecom people. And telecom people tend to be very restrictive about the information, and IP or IT people tend to be, oh yeah, we have a problem there, we need to fix it. And one day, a telecom guy told to IT guy, oh, you're from the IT network, right? That's what he used to print with the network printer, right? And that was this kind of relationship between two sides, between quite an open side, which was basically connected with current technology, and the telecom side, which was resisting that. Modern organizations in telecom are merging the two groups and are somehow refactoring the mindset. It's slowly changing. Now, really, what are we talking when we are talking about SS7? Now we are going to go in the packet, so we need to know what's there. Well, this is a stack, and basically you're looking at physical level, MAC level, ARP level, IP level, TCP level, and application. And you see that it has, okay, a stack, so it has layers, but it has nothing in common with IP, with this traditional approach. And all the networks are still using this to run any kind of fancy service to redirect stuff, to send you a little SMS when you roam around countries, to accept prepaid card even if you're not in the home country of the prepaid cards. So, to start with this example, all the kind of things that goes with prepaid is taken care by Camel application path, CAP. And this is dealing with generating queries to know if you have sufficient money on your account. MAP is going to be more about you're roaming from one country to another, and you're going to want to jump from one cell to another. It's called handover. That's going to be what's being used. This is just to communicate with the radio system. So BSS map is basically making the radio cell work. ISUP and PUP is only for fixed communication. And below that, all you have here is just transport information. So you have, okay, of course, packets with indication of the circuit you're talking about, and we start to see things like DPC and OPC. This is what's interesting for us. IP address in this world is not called, of course, an IP address, it's called a point code. And DPC is a destination point code, OPC, origination point code. So we're talking about what's going to enable us to do some scanning. This is varying from 14-bit to 24-bit. So we're talking of network where the whole address size is 16,000. So you can very quickly scan all the network that is connected. Now you may not be able to see the whole network if we refer back to this link. A lot of the nodes don't forward any kind of packet that you send. So we are going to look at that. And of course, the thing that you want to do is to inject in the application information into the real payload some attacks. So let's see what we can really do in there. STP is what is going to route your message. So if you can connect to these, think it's signaling transfer point, think of it as directly something that routes your message. SIGTRAN is a slow but quite strong emergence of IP network in telecom operator. So you carry telecom signaling on top of IP. Value-added services is any kind of thing that is going to do complex interaction with the system. Signaling gateway is what you can use to, for example, receive IP data on your mobile. Then, SS7 service providers are global interconnects. So when a new telecom operator, let's say I start my Philippe Langlois telecom operator in Spain, I'm not going to request an SS7 connection to all the world, which is what is needed. You basically pay a fee to this SS7 provider, and they will connect you through their agreement to all the SS7 people. So if one person hacks into there, one person has access to all the SS7 networks in the world. Well, and the rest is basically the ISDN terminals, the GSM, we talked about that. GTT translation is the fact that each time you're dialing a number on your phone, you're going to convert that into the real destination. And that's something that happens all the time. You don't talk inside the signaling network of network phones with the same address plan as we use. It's completely different in there. Okay, we talked about the femtocell. You can also inject signaling in the SIG, UAP telephony. One very interesting thing is that it's mandatory for each GSM network to have a legal interception gateway. So this ARIG enables cops to do tapping of phone lines. And basically what happens is that a cop will need to monitor a drug dealer email or So we dial in a specific number or connect to some kind of web application. Enter its login and password, and then basically just say this is a number that I wish to record. And you will receive on his mobile phone, the police officer's mobile phone, you will receive a copy of the SMS. And each time a call goes from or to this mobile phone, you will get the call, but you cannot speak in the microphone. Nothing goes, but you can hear the whole conversation. And you will receive copies of the email that goes on the, let's say, BlackBerry. BlackBerry is a bit different. It's not different. So, what is interesting is sometimes in SS7 you have weird stuff going on. During another pen test that we've done, where a lot of tests with precise progress meanings, and at one progress meaning we say, oh, we tried that and that and that, and didn't work. So the guy said, well, slow down a little bit. You did which test on which systems? Okay, so you saw no success at Rabbit. We are like, no, doesn't matter. But like, well, what happened is that one of these systems was the legal interception and it crashed when we did that. So no cop in the country was able to conduct any kind of legal interception on this system, this telecom operator, for the duration of the crash. And what was very interesting is to see that our tests were going mostly towards the SNS. And since the LIG gets a copy of anything, the copy of this message was actually what triggered. So we could even not target at all this LIG and still compromise it. What was funny is that the law enforcement and intelligence agencies were trying to social engineer us to give them the attack on the LIG and not to tell it to the equipment vendor of the LIG. Things are very funny in this way. Okay, let's talk about some example of attacks. Here is one protocol exchange just to make not mobile, like LAN call. So you take your phone off hook and you get a dial tone, you put the digits, and as soon as the central office as soon as the switch gets all the digits, you say, okay, I need to start initial address message, which say, I'm going to do a call, and the router, the STP, is going to forward it to another switch. And then the subscriber B, which you're calling, gets some ringing, and then basically this is ringing okay, so you hear yourself the ringing, and then the guys take it off hook, and you get an answer, the circuit is connected, you're actually talking to your friend. So each time you make a phone call on a mobile, like not mobile, fixed link, this is what is going on in the SS7 network. So what kind of attack can we do here? You see any kind of attack that is something obvious? Okay, I might add something. Each time you're sending IAM, when you're doing the setup, this switch is provisioning a link from here to here and making it as busy to say this is going to be used. Do you see maybe something that we can do? Simple attack. Oh, no? Okay. Denial of service is easy there. You can inject SS7 message, which for this protocol contains no serial number. There's no sequence number. It's even worse than UDP. In there you just inject and the switch will take it. What is of course obvious is that there's a limited number of voice lines between one switch and another. You just fill up with 32,000 requests and you're sure that there won't be any sufficient circuit for any person to call really from that region to that region for the period of time of expiry of this circuit. So So what we are talking about, a very easy way to disrupt a nationwide communication network. What is funny is that we can also make the whole phone of one city ring once everywhere, synchronously. So here I don't know on the number of pop attacks that it would create, or the scary spooky effect of hearing all the phone ring once, but nothing. This is basically the kind of thing that you can do. Okay, here queries flow. Well, basically what you're going to say is that I'm subscriber A, I want to disconnect from this person because I hung up. Here we get into another kind of attack. No, it's also a denial of service. But here, since you know which subscriber is talking to another subscriber, or you can pretty much guess it, because once again it's a limited number of addresses. So selective DOS, you can pretty much say, okay, this person is going to be disconnected. So that's something that you can use quite easily in order to make disconnection and recall on some modem pool. Well, this is some attack that we've seen in the world. Okay, this is what another attack is what I was talking about when we were talking about HLR Lookup. So very easily, you connect to some company like Galaxy services, and you're going to send HTTP requests with the phone number of the person you wish to track, and you will receive back actually which country it is in, because you will receive the MSC number, so the switching center, which is taking care of this person. So you can easily track some people. Tobias Engel has been presenting that at Chaos Computer Club, and I think some American guy presented it again recently this year in DevCon. Okay, there's even more high-profile attacks where you can actually completely disable any kind of communication to one phone specifically. So what you're going to do is you're going to use one system where you have visitor location registers that are located in each country, which are going to record, for example, my phone here is not native from system network. So my phone is going to be registered into the VLR of now it is Vodafone ES, and this is going to be where my HLR, my whole database of Vodafone France, or it could be Orange, it could be anything, my operator in France, is going to say, oh, you're calling this person, but this person you have to talk to that VLR in this country, he's taking care of that. So here, the obvious way to abuse that is that you're going to send some VLR which is not the VLR where I'm located. I could stay in my own country, but if I infect the copy of my HLR database saying, oh, Philippe is in Uzbekistan, he's not in Spain, or he's not in France, then directly what will happen is that the next request to my HLR is going to say, oh, he's in Uzbekistan, even though I'm registered on my own network. So you see, in terms of signaling, there's not really the kind of security that we have the ability to witness or anticipate. And here, for example, okay, I'm directly in Russian Federation in Kazakhstan, and this is going to be my MSI SDN. Basically, I cannot do anything. I can probably witness that I have no calls. It's a bit weird. So we'll switch off my phone, switch it on again, and this will generate again a message of registration to the network. So if we come back to here, what we're going to say is that we have an update location, which is going to say I'm there, I'm in France, or I'm in Spain, and then start to receive my calls again. So it's a bit concerning. Now it gets even better.
I have a question to this side. Doesn't it mean that you have to be manning the middle, so
there are going to be a lot of network elements that are interacting with SS7.
It has to be one.
So it couldn't just be one of them.
There is no authentication. You can send it to any HLR.
The authentication is there in the form of, oh, you're on the SS7 network, so you're trusted. But it's hard to get on the SS7 network if you're not using the technique that I was talking about. So now, what we're going to talk is about SIGTRAN, because SIGTRAN is a huge opening, and for good reason. Back in the day when we were using non-IP carry network, with the old stack of MTP, level 1, 2, 3, etc. It runs on slow networks that at most can carry 34 megabits. It's optical network. Now, with Ethernet, it's way less expensive. It's really cheaper to use it on TCP. You can basically use standard equipment that you use for your network. So there's a huge push, at least inside the organization, to push for SIGTRAN to carry Telecom SS7 on top of IP. So there's a nice specification, which is RFC 4960, to specify about SCTP, which is something you may have heard about the Linux kernel exploitation. Because look at the RFC, it's so complex. You see, oh yeah, there must be something bad in there. And what's worse is that it's one of the 3 protocols by default in the Linux kernel. UDP, TCP, SCTP. And very much all of the distribution now have these modules already in the kernel, which is accessible. So you'll see quite some problem in there. It's very complex. But it has a lot of advantages. And these advantages are there for telecom perspective. So it's very resilient. You have secure cookies, which are up to 32 bytes, so trying to spoof that is going to be a little challenge. It's multi-stream. When you do a connection, you can, in TCP, you do a connection, you have STD in, STD out, and out-of-band packets. Typically, you have 3 communication ways. In there you can say, okay, I'm going to send 100 streams to the person, and I have 2 control streams which come back to me. That's the kind of thing that you can do. And you can say, I'm going to connect from 192.168.1.1213 and another IP address in 10 network to 192.168.2.x and another address in 10. So you connect a set of addresses to another set of addresses. It's multi-rolling connection. Well, it's quite interesting. The thing is, normally you could not connect and do things like scans, because in the spec what he said is that when you send a packet and it's not expected, you should not answer anything. So what happens is that when you send a SCTP init message, which is like a SYN message, you're going to send something that should remain silent. It's very slow for scan. So what happens is that actually what we get is abort message from Linux kernel and most implementation. So that's very nice of them not to follow the RFC implementation guidelines, because they are actually giving the attacker a lot of accuracy to their scan. And here, basically, since you get the abort, you can specifically rule out one port, etc. Init ACK, and I know that port 102 is open, etc., etc. So that's something that we implemented in the SCTPscan. So you can, it's open source, you can run it on many architecture. Now Nmap has some support for SCTP scanning, but it lacks some tricks in order to have reliable results, such as, for example, very much a lot of connections have to originate from the same port that are doing the destination, because they are configured, the network elements are configured to respond to them. So quite easy, you just running. Say, I want to auto scan each machine that is answering correctly to SCTP. Okay. Okay, now if we try to hack into the upper layer, because here what we are really doing with SCTP is we are trying to find just, let's say, a PPTP connection port, if you want an analogy, or IPsec tunnel. You want the tunnel. Once you have established the tunnel, you know that there's a port open here, listing to some kind of encapsulation of SS7. You want to inject all the upper layer. And what you're going to do is you're going to talk to one STP that probably is going to translate it to some internal dialect, which can be whatever. The transport network can be whatever, you don't care. So what you're going to do here is try to get this connection to port 2905 is a MJUA encapsulation port. And if you're a legitimate peer, you're going to then have init hack. It's a four-way uncheck. So you have init hack, then cookie echo, and cookie hack. And when you have cookie hack, you're connected. What happens is that very often in the communication method, when you're coming from the non-standard port, it's not going to tell you, well, any kind of answer if you talk to a legitimate port. So you can actually detect that by non-answering, you're talking to a port that will accept connection from another network. And if you remember the multi-homing attack, you can send in your initiate, so in your init packet, the fact that you're connecting from multiple addresses. So if you inject in there some addresses that are the addresses that are legitimate from the legitimate peer, you will start to get connection backs. So there's some vulnerabilities that are present in SCTP and MJUA and implementation. Well, here it's mostly implementation. That take advantage of the very complex network protocol. And we are only talking about the basic layer. It's going to get more interesting. So when you're scanning the SS7 perimeters, well, you have many different access points that we talked about. Let's say you hacked through the internet, whatever. You got into a femtocell, you were able to control part of the radio network. What is interesting is that this network is also connected through their router to a lot of different SS7 network or SS7 peers. And of course, you want to be connected to the international basically network. You want to be connected to your national operators, and you want to have some kind of interconnection with, let's say, bulk SMS providers. Well, first, of course, the STP, this router, is going to be used as a firewall. You can define firewalling rules, but it's always at the cost of potentially affecting the reliability of the router itself. What we have is not only the fact that, oh, I might cut some legitimate SS7 traffic. There's also one thing, which is I might generate impact on the CPU cores that are doing the routing that are impacting, of course, the quality of the connection. One thing you can start to picture in your head is we talked about OPC and DPC, these signaling point code SPCs, as IP addresses, a bit the same. Now you have to start thinking about subsystem numbers, SSN. And these are like ports. So for each specific application, let's say applications that take care of the billing, you have one specific subsystem number. And you also have domain, so network indicator, or what domain, what perimeter we are talking about. So, of course, you can do some filtering, and you can say from this group of SPC, you can connect only to this group of SPCs with this subsystem number. Very rarely used. What's interesting is that SPC is something that is somehow very secret, but they start to do some openness. So now you can pretty much request this kind of list of international SPC, and you'll end up with each of the international SPC for each operator. And this is public. So if one person gets access to one SS7 network anywhere, he knows directly which system he wants to target on the international network. And from there, that's how some spam is done, is you get SS7 traffic, which carries spam and is going to be targeting very specifically these networks. Well, I told you it was a bit particular, these SPC were either 14-bit for European and the rest of the world, and just for the US and 24-bit. To make things easy, usually we use decimal notation, but some people consider that, oh, maybe we could have multiple notation. So for ITU, you can have a group of 3-bit, 8-bit, 3-bit, or a group of 5-bit, 4-bit, 5-bit. So that's something crazy, is that you can have an SPC address that you don't know which numbering plan it is. Is it 383 or 545? And so you cannot know really to which address it maps. So that's a bit the problem that you may end up, we release the SSN calc, which enables you to do the conversion. If you end up on some system, you won't be lost. You'll be, okay, what I'm talking about is this, and convert everything to decimal, and you can start to picture this. Now, in P1 Security Telecom Auditor, we have developed a module which enables you to automatically map that to a group or a network topology. Because when you get the raw messages, the raw data on the SPC, you don't know really what kind of network planning the guy was using when designing his use of these SPCs. It's clearly very important to zone your network planning, especially for the internal network, because some part of the system are going to use by the testbed network. So when you do that, what happens is that basically you can say, oh, there are 7 SPCs which are down there, which are not very much used, but look a lot like some of the production network. And from there, you can see that this one is actually a copy of this one, but for the testbed. And since the testbed is very often interconnected with the real network, but has no kind of billing, you just send spam through the testbed. So basically, something goes on the network can happen because very often the people from the network operation will have forgotten about this system. It was 2G. It was not the 3G that we're using now. So you get fraud that can go on for weeks. And there, fraud can mean easily hundreds of thousands of dollars per day. So, little quiz. Which is the original network planning? Is it 383 on the left, or is it 545 that was used for the same, exactly same list of raw decimal point code addresses? Any kind of guess? Which looks like a logical address planning in there? No? Now, obviously, on the right, you have way fewer groups. Here, if you count the number of groups, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, So you have, let's say, 15, 16 network. Here, you have something like 30. So it's way more logical to have them grouped this way than to group them with only 2 top-level addresses and then a lot of subnetworks. This makes the other here makes much more sense. So by inferring this kind of thing, you can easily map where the interesting data is, and that's just like inference model that enable us to do this. Okay, small comparison with TCP in order to make things clear. We talked about the endpoint, so what we have here is the endpoint for the SS7. It's SCTP port. Then we want in there to do some scanning to know what is live as the network equipment. So we are going to do MTP3 or M3UA scanning that scan each different SPC. Then you want to actually know what kind of subsystem, what kind of service exists. So you're going to use a higher layer to do the equivalent of ping scan. And there, what you have is SCCP DPC scan. So quite directly, after that, you want to target each of these subsystem number for each of these machines, and you're going to use the SSN scanning within the same protocol. After that, you want to go to the higher application that you're going to use. Are you going to target the radio network? Are you going to reroute calls with the mobile application part, which is taking care of saying, oh, this user is there? No, this is exactly the same kind of attack that you get at the higher level. Here, with a different kind of setup, where you see the translation from one network to another network. You have little problems with stack desynchronization. Basically, since you don't have the exact same mapping between two stacks, you can abuse one stack level or one stack state in one level and then the other to inject and basically discover topology, which is going to be used later to inject, for example, sessionless data. So that's a little bit tricky. I have no time to. Okay, this is. Okay, so in the end, the global strategy, if you are into SS7 audit, is first to scan for the entry point, then for each DPC scan for the services that it supports, then do the application test. That can be many of them. So right now we have something like 120 different tests, and each test may send something like 16,000 packets. Another test is going to send only one. But it's like MAP, it's like Nessus or Qualis, it's a bit the same. What happens is that you have many modules that each of them is going to target one part of the network. Well, to get secure, it's quite easy. First, you have a set of network which is limited. So by just knowing what network element you're talking about is going to make a huge difference. And very few people in the Telecom group have this knowledge. So just by going through normal audits that you can perfectly perform from the TCP/IP side, you're going to do a good job. Now, doing that on the SS7 level itself is very hard. You most of the time don't have access to the SS7 stack, which are closed source. There's one thing called OpenSS7, which is supposed to be an open SS7 stack. It's a mess. If you start to work with this, it's going to be a problem. There's some customer acceptance testing, which is being rolled out now to accept or not some kind of equipment if they are secure. So it's starting to get into the practices of telco. There start to be some security tools from the vendors themselves, very rarely used. So except for SNS fraud. And then automated scanner of SS7 perimeters. Right now there's very few solutions that we get. So in the current development, you can download from P1sec website SCTPscan, SS7 Cork, and even get in touch with us if you want to do some tests onto the research networks that we selected. We developed also a product which is basically this automated scanner that enable to do things that are not currently being used so much into the telecom side. To give a conclusion, what we see is that there's a constant attack on the SS7 perimeter. It cannot be considered as closed anymore, mainly for many reasons, but the ultimate reason is that it's going to merge with the IP network. What you can already witness is that it's a change of mindset that is happening, and telecom operators are being raised to, let's say, a correct strike level. there's also very interesting pressure here. There's a pressure of the regulators, which are now considering this critical infrastructure protection, that these people must know what they're talking about. And it starts with very practical things. What is in your network? Force your vendor to tell you what did you deploy exactly, so that the X25 kind of joke doesn't happen again. And that the people know inside the network what they're talking about. I want to credit a few people from TSTF and THC project, and a lot of industry partners also, and researchers which are doing huge work, but most of the time it's not very much disclosed and very much secreted from our scenes. Thank you. Thank you very much.